your employees tell you what kind of boss you are, and your customers tell you what kind of business you own.
Great businesses don't spring up out of nowhere. It takes grit, perseverance, personal growth, and failure to reach the status of an iconic local business. Welcome back to Season 6 of the Building Bellingham podcast, where we're bringing you 8 more stories of local leaders and how they are building Bellingham. Logan, welcome to the studio.
Thanks so much. Thanks for having me.
This is Season 6, Episode 3.
Yeah,
We're at
good
our
job,
nice,
guys.
huge studio here in Cornwall Park, Bellingham, Washington. And you run a business that is what I would consider to be a staple in Bellingham, a place that a lot of people love to go. And there's a very special experience when you go there. Tell me a little bit more about you. Where are you from? Did you think that you would be running a restaurant circa 2024?
Probably at times. I've lived in Bellingham for it'll be 25 years, I think in about a month. Moved here when I was 18. I started in hospitality. Restaurant first job was in the kitchen at Godfather's Pizza,
Yep.
If it's a Wenatchee pizza place, I worked there pretty much.
Nice.
Started working in bars and started bartending. Uisce they gave me my first bartending gig, and kind of fell in love with the freedom that job entails, that comes with that job. And just kind of started deciding as I was getting older, maybe this schedule doesn't work so well for me.
It's like a pretty late
a lot of late
start.
Yeah.
Late to late.
Yeah. And then my wife and I got pregnant, and we're having our daughter, and that really made it feel like this isn't going to work. So I was working a day or two a week at Redlight, just kind of filling in, stuff like that, while I had a little store, a little shop, and was kind of doing an artist thing. And we kind of worked out a deal to buy it, and they were extremely generous in how that all worked out. The fact we were able to do it is because of their trust. That's Becca and Shay, the original owners. And yeah, we took it over and changed everything. not because we bought it because we loved it. We thought it was my favorite bar in town, but I think the market was kind of moving, and what people expected out of that experience is changing. And so we just, added food and table service and just kind of grew. And then COVID hit, and that changed everything too.
Things got kind of weird.
We were just trying to keep our head above water. And so that meant more food. Bar is not going to make it, so we have to do a restaurant. And that kind of forced us to look at things differently, frankly, Bellingham to kind of see us differently. That can be kind of tough, convincing your demographic that you're something that they don't think you are yet, type of thing. And so, we just kept kind of growing, pushing, and trying to guess right through COVID.
Yep.
That's all it really was.
A lot of big guesses, right?
Yeah, big ones. But we just kind of decided, just make a decision and stick with it, commit.
Yep.
was kind of the mantra.
I feel like most people can't do that. I think a lot of people have a hard time. I mean, making a decision, it wouldn't be a decision if there wasn't pros and cons to it, right?
Sure.
Everything would just be butter, easy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No-brainers, as they call it.
It was all just so fast. We had to drastically change our whole entire business plan 6 different times with the different, how many people are allowed inside? Are they allowed inside at all? Masks, all these different mandates that were very much being put in place to keep people safe or safe as possible, and were pretty difficult to navigate, and it just meant you were a new business every 6 months.
Yep.
So I don't know what we necessarily did right or wrong. We just really tried to be consistent and maintain hours, and just focus on staff. Just keep staff working. If the ones that want to work, keep them working.
Yep.
And so coming out of it, it really allowed us to, we were fully staffed. We were ready. That was a huge springboard for us. And so it kind of exploded there, and then we decided to make the move, get some more space and a hood and a real kitchen and all that big expensive stuff, and they've been killing it ever since. Yeah. I'm the maintenance boy. I don't really do much.
Well, that means you've hired good people.
Yeah. And we have incredible people, and then they hire really good people, and they get trained really well, and the thing I love about hospitality is you don't have to go to school for it. You don't need formal training. You can get a job and immediately be paid to be trained. And it really just comes down to, do you work hard and do you give a shit? That will lead you to success, essentially. It's pretty cool. That's not to get too ratatouille about it, but people can come from anywhere and do special things in this industry, and it's pretty fun.
Let's take a rewind back, because you had said one of the most important things to you during COVID was to keep staffed and keep normal business hours. And as a business owner myself, I can only assume, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but I can only assume that most places were trying to figure out every way to cut everything to survive. What's that decision like to go, well, this is going to kind of suck for us financially during these times where we don't know if we're going to be profitable at all times, but knowing that like there was this kind of this market share, not even market share, but you realize that like if we're going to do this for a long time, we have to build this solid base. What was that decision like for you?
We're really always kind of looking, we talk a lot about the runway and how long is the runway and what does it look like at the end of it as opposed to what it looks like right here. And, so minimum 5 years is basically what we're trying to think ahead about. COVID was a little different because at the end of the day, we got a couple of rounds of money. They were giving our businesses like ours money to keep people working. And those were the rules. And it was just like, well, that seems pretty straightforward.
Right.
And it kind of felt like, our staff's either going to get money from unemployment if they don't want to work, or they're going to get money from us to work. And we just asked who wanted to work. And most of them really did, And so that one was a little different, but, we're always just thinking quite a ways down the road. Like I'm not wholly interested in squeezing every dollar out of this today or this month or this year. You got to build the foundation for it to really kind of work long term, I think.
Yeah, and start to work on its own better.
Yeah, that evolves. We're kind of to a point now where the business isn't really going to change too much more, Redlight specifically. What we do is, under the umbrella of our ownership or other partnerships or anything like that, that can change. But Redlight specifically is probably not going to get too much bigger. Yeah. Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big space already.
I'd like to stay where it is, preferably. Yeah, it's a good size space.
As a business owner, you have to kind of keep your eye on growth, and but you also, when you have those moments where you're able to breathe and you're like, oh, this is actually like at a cruising altitude that's working really well. You have this, I feel like most people have this balance of like, okay, what's the next thing? But then also are really that balance of ambition and contentment, Tell me, like you just had mentioned, like I would be really happy if this stayed cruising the way it is because it's really good right now.
There's kind of two answers to that question. There's the overall career, for lack of a better word, and then there's each individual business. And so just speaking for Redlight, there is no contentment for me. There's a dumb cliche thing that we talk about in our management meetings about is you can think you're a 9. You're probably not, but you can think you're a 9. If you're not constantly trying to be a 10, you're going to be a 6 in 6 months. Like that's the nature of our industry, is that you will backslide if you're not constantly trying to improve. That ambition never really goes away for those things. It will eventually stop because we're currently building out the old space and we have a whole new concept coming there. I'll hit a point where I think that's probably enough, But it's just, if we can squeak out a bit of a living, live comfortably and provide a space where as many people as we need to run the business can also live comfortably, that's extremely important to us. That's
sustainability,
just as important as us making a living. Then that's as big as we can go while maintaining those kind of values. Then I'm happy to go.
Let's rewind a little bit to when you bought the business. And this is right next to where the Green Frog was. There's some pretty cool history of that building too. And I remember like when the pilot, like the soft opening happened and kind of that whole beginning. And that was before that you had purchased the business, but there was this such a great small vibe there, and it's only grown that great energy and environment since you guys have taken over and moved and all of these things. You said you were you're an artist yourself. What kind of art do you do?
Mostly acrylic painting.
Nice.
I painted on shoes. That's what I kind of got known for.
Nice.
It's weird.
No, that's the cool part about art is that anybody can say, well, I don't like that art or I do like that art,
sure,
but it's so subjective, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so, and my mom would say that anytime you're working with your hands and you're like creating something, you're doing art or, anything that you're creating is 100%. Art. Not everyone's going to like it, but some people really like it or a lot of people, I don't know.
Yeah, so for sure.
Tell me about this conversation, when you acquired the business. Were you a regular at the time, or did you say you were working there?
Yeah, I was working there a bit. I'd just taken over. I was the new bar manager. I'd only been for a few weeks. A buddy of mine and I were kind of looking at spaces, looking at properties to possibly do something. And then my wife and I kind of started talking about, do we kind of make a run at Redlight, ask them if they'd be interested in selling. They were both kind of moving away from the industry, kind of figuring out what else they wanted to do with their lives. And we decided, okay, we'll talk to them. And then the next time I saw Becca, the co-owner, she asked me if I would be interested in buying Redlight. So it was kind of, it kind of felt good. We just had a baby. We had just bought a house the year before. We didn't really have any money. So it was like, yes, we're very interested, but resources. We'd have to figure out something. Yeah. Basically carried a loan for us, and we
did an owner contract on it.
Yeah, it was very, very kind of them to do that. Showed an immense amount of trust, and because I kind of told them from the get-go I have plans, to make some changes and all that kind of stuff.
How was that conversation? Because I
think they
poured their energy into it and their heart and soul into it, right? And
but they're just nice, humble people. They can see that someone else might have different ideas. They were very kind about it. Yeah. Like they also kind of saw that it had kind of become a victim of its own success. There's a long line to get a drink. Yeah. And it was 4 blocks from everybody else. And so on a weekend, people were like, yeah, we could go there, but we got to wait in line for half an hour. So trying to springboard off of that success as opposed to let it sort of drag you down, because people will make that decision for themselves and then stop coming on those nights, and all of a sudden you realize,
like
Friday's
a couple
not that
times they
busy
waited
anymore.
too long or something.
Yeah.
But I just remember the first time I walked in there, I was, Bellingham has a lot of great local businesses, a lot of great places to eat. I feel like, and this is actually something Emil that owns Banter said, was that Bellingham, the demographic here we're creatures of comfort. We like this brewery with some sort of spectrum of the same type of food. It's all really good, but there's the creatures of comfort in Bellingham. We all like our PNW bistro style food. Yeah. How did you make that decision to go, great, I love that, that's cool, we're not going to do that? And you guys made something very different, very unique, at least to Bellingham.
So it started with the wontons, and the wontons were 100% because it was just purely a necessity of our infrastructure. You can only boil or steam. You can only, even panini presses, things like that are supposed to have specific ventilation that space didn't have. It was just, we were really stuck to a pretty specific thing that we could do. And I didn't, in those things when in, standard PNW bistro fare, it's just not that exciting to me.
Yeah.
And really it just came down to, we are trying to get people to walk down here at 12:30 on a Tuesday night when it's windy and cold and raining.
Yep.
And so, would have preferred to do just dumplings, but wontons were, like a pan-fried dumpling, but wontons you could boil.
Yeah.
So, and we just thought if we scratch make them, hand make them, that'll be enough to get them down there. I calculated if we sold about $350 worth of wontons a day, that would pay for table service.
I love that.
That was the goal.
How many wontons do you think that is?
It's about 350. They roughly come out to about $1 a piece.
Yeah.
And then they went crazy, and it was great, but hand wrapping those, there's you end up with a couple of people downstairs all day.
Yeah, just cranking them.
Gets expensive, so it's just like got to outrun it, you know. And so, and then it just worked well enough. We just kind of let it evolve.
Yeah.
Kind of listen to what your customers are telling you.
Well, I can tell you that when I went there for the first time, when you guys had the dumplings with my wife, her first response to it, she took a bite and was like, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
So
there's still some of the bow is starting to jump out ahead of them a little bit, but it's funny the spicy pork and the ginger chicken or whatever is still like top 4 sellers.
Is it what's cranking?
Yeah. I mean, we got a million other things now, but that's kind of what people want.
Yeah.
And it's okay.
Yeah. I remember at the original location, you guys had a great drink menu, but since I've been going to the new location, I mean, that drink menu, the specialty drink menu it's so extensive. Like there's so many amazing
40.
Options. 40?
Currently 40.
Oh, and then you have the seasonal drinks
actively
too.
on the menu. Yeah, we have a seasonal like the old Redlight classics, which are mostly drinks that existed before we bought the business.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a show of legitimate respect to the original version. And we have, I think we have 8 or 10 NA drinks now. That's a huge,
really good.
Those are big. So there's a lot. I mean, there's hundreds in the backlog over the years.
Yeah, and you can always go back and fire something back up.
Pull them out from time to time.
Yeah.
We try to keep things pushing forward, but having that many menus allows you to kind of like, pick and choose some blockbusters from the past.
Bring back some whammies.
Yeah, that everybody likes. So they are constantly innovating and figuring out ways to produce and serve it at volume. It's a lot of work. They put in our Teo's our front of house manager, kind of GM. He kind of oversees that whole thing, and then our bar manager Hannah, they really do it. It's crazy. I've managed bars and nothing like anything I ever did.
Yeah,
that's what I was saying earlier. They're just better at it than I ever was. That's why I stay out of their way.
Yeah, well, you hired really good people, and I am curious too, because I would say one of the challenges is in a city like Bellingham versus a Seattle or a Vancouver, where someone like my sister, career bartender, mixologist, makes awesome drinks, made a really good living doing it. Bellingham being a college town and having a small group of like career restaurant, service industry folks. How do you find those people in a place where that's not like, you go to New York or any big cities, it's a big career, like at a, good restaurant.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're all over. It being a college town, you have to kind of balance. You'll have people that are in it for, they believe it's a career from kind of the get-go. They see it as that. And then you have people that are just trying to get to their next big backpacking trip or whatever. Yeah. There's, all of them have value and all of them have valid goals. So balancing those is kind of tricky. It can be, but that's a big part of like what we really try and do. But finding them is, I think we've definitely found some that maybe didn't feel that it was necessarily what they were going to do for a significant period of their lives and now do. But there's just a lot of young people that want to make a pretty good amount of money in a relatively short amount of time. It's not like it's not hard work. It is. It's very hard, and it's legitimately skilled labor. But it's we'll schedule all 3 or 4 your days in a row, and you'll have time off, and you'll get to live your life and do other things outside of there. So it's enticing. It was for me when I was 23 when I started or whatever. And yeah, I think the key is finding the ones that do want to take it further than this is what I'm going to do while I go to school, or this is,
Sure.
whatever. And then kind of specifically nurturing them to try and get them what they want out of it, because that's good for them and it's great for us.
And how important was that for you starting? Like, you have people that acquire businesses, but they don't have necessarily any experience with the business. They just love the business. And there's nothing wrong with that. But ultimately, you started from the beginning in those positions. And how important is that? Like when you're showing somebody, there's that level of respect knowing that you've done that. Do you feel like there's a stark difference to that,
I think, yeah, I would prefer to work for someone who's done it and kind of been in the trenches, I think I've learned a ton from all the places that I've worked, some good, some bad, like I don't really see that sort of mentorship as solely positive. Sometimes you learn things that you just don't ever want to do.
I'm not going to do it that way.
Yeah. Totally. But yeah, I think there's a ton of value having worked in virtually every position in a restaurant. And I think for me, it just, I just have a lot of respect for it. Frankly, I believe that Redlight is the best restaurant I've ever been a part of. So to see how they do it I have an immense amount of respect for how they do it. Yeah, I think it's probably the most important thing. There's a lot of important things. It's a weird industry and from an ownership standpoint.
Definitely. What's your favorite position you've ever done? I mean, if you could just objectively look at every position you've done in a restaurant, maybe set aside owner. Let's remove owner from the conversation. What's one of your favorite things you've ever done?
I delivered for Domino's
Yeah.
one summer, and I don't know. It was just like probably the first legitimately beautiful summer. Like it's kind of like the ones we just regularly have now, but back in 2000 or whenever this was, is usually
before that it was all rain and cold.
It was
dark.
It was a lot colder.
We were in the dark ages.
A lot dark,
in
a lot
Northwest
more rainy. It was just this gorgeous summer, and I just drove around, my window down, and listened to heavy metal music really loud and just delivered pizza. That was a pretty fun 3 months. But bartending bartending positively changed my life in a way that I don't think my little summer at the Lakeway Domino's did. But
Yeah, shout out to the Lakeway Domino's. Yeah,
I worked at all of them. I worked at literally every Domino's in Bellingham. The Sunset, Lakeway, Samish. I put a stint in at all of them.
just trying to figure out if you could triangulate the best route.
Oh yeah, I know my way around. My buddy owns Pizza Time, and we argue a lot about who knows their way around better.
Yeah. Do you guys ever have a competition? Like, would you ever set up a competition and it would be like 10 pizza deliveries and whoever gets there first?
No, but we should.
I'm just trying to kick shit up,
Yeah.
like stir the pot.
I need to send a text.
Yeah. What's your buddy's name?
Brian.
Hey, Brian, this is an official challenge here with Logan for the
man.
pizza delivery challenge around Bellingham.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just got really excited and doesn't know why.
It's like, what? Yeah. You were at the first location, and it's a small space. It's a very small, I would call it intimate. Small. It's a real estate word, intimate meaning smaller. But no, but you're in there. It's great. You're spending your time there. It's a nice place to spend a nice hour and a half stint. But at some point, were you thinking, okay, we got to figure out space? Like, we need more space? Because the space you took over is huge. It was the 1,000-acre cider space.
Yes, essentially. I didn't feel that space was big enough to basically support the financial investment that we needed to put in a full kitchen.
Yeah.
We were at Grand Ave for a month, and I realized that it could have done it. That's why we're now planning to put in a full kitchen at the old space for a new concept.
Are we able to talk about it at the end of this?
Yeah.
It's not top secret classified?
No, I don't. Yeah. So, but really, it was butts and seats. That was. I am relatively cautious when it comes to that sort of thing. That's a really big decision.
Yeah.
Doing a build out that size that takes that long, I probably wouldn't do with just a new concept. That's just how I am. So we kind of I feel like we had kind of proof of concept with the old space, and people were ready for us to do more. We'd done a couple of these New Year's Eve events where we kind of expanded the menu and did these course meals, and they would just sell out immediately. And so we just kind of felt that the time was right. We kind of went and looked at the space out of curiosity mostly. And then Teo, our GM, he came with me, and he just looked at me and was like, this is Big Red Light. He basically made the decision that day.
Yeah, and you said you've been there for 3 years now?
We've been in that space it's only been about a year and a half.
It's only been a year and a half?
Yeah.
Wow, it feels
I've
like
been
longer.
working in there I was working in there for 3 years ago.
Maintenance man. Yeah.
Well, Johnny that we talked about from Uisce, he and I built everything together. So he's a contractor wizard. So he was there for that one.
Shout out to Johnny for the beer balancing trick.
Shout out to Johnny. Always shout out to Johnny.
Yeah.
That's a blanket statement.
If you hadn't been to Uisce at that era, Johnny would take 3 pints, right? Mm-hmm. And he would stack them offset. Mm-hmm. So the first one's in the middle, the second one's offset to the right, and the third one's back offset in the middle, and you're just like bracing for impact.
Yeah.
And he's just like, whatever, here, which one do you want? Like,
yeah, he's fascinating person. I don't know how he figured that out, or decided he wanted to do that.
Just maybe a few broken pints.
People still confuse us for each other because it's just like tattoos, beard, white guy.
It wasn't even like a confusion. I just remember this mystical being that was stacking beers.
No, but they do constantly. And when I worked there, I used to people would come and start a conversation with me, and as Johnny, and I would just try to continue the conversation. I usually would try to commit him to some sort of scheduled thing later.
Yeah, nice.
Like the couple days later, like I'm gonna come help you move or whatever.
Yeah, nice. Just setting him up.
Just just fun.
Yeah, you have to.
12. Those were 12-hour shifts, man. We got you gotta do something.
Yeah, he's got to wonder why he's getting weird messages.
Yeah, keep it interesting. Yeah, I'm sure he did.
A while back, I had Doc Swinson's for the first time, and it quickly became my go-to whiskey. In season 5 of the show, I sat down with Jesse Parker, the master blender, and heard about the development of both the whiskey and their business. We connected so much that I just had to ask him about being our community partner for this season. Doc Swinson's is produced right here in Ferndale, Washington, and is available for sale at Hagen. I'm a big bourbon guy, so my personal favorite is any of their bourbons, whether they're aged in port cask or just straight bourbon. You can't go wrong. They make award-winning whiskey, but more importantly, they're just awesome people, and we really appreciate them. So he helped you build out the space.
Yeah. So he quit the industry and got back into building. That was what he'd done his whole life. And man, he can basically make anything. Like the reason Grand Ave looks the way it did in my head is because of him. He was a huge part of it.
It's a beautiful space.
Thank you.
Yeah, like the old space had its own charm, had its own vibe to it as well. But I think it did channel some of the, because it used to be
Well, it was a butcher shop. It's got that crazy story of the guy that got murdered in there.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, the
That's
butcher
exciting.
in 1906, I think. His name was Frederick Dames, and he got into a really violent fight with a drifter.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, cheers to Frederick.
Yeah, cheers to Frederick.
Yeah.
I know. We've thought about doing some sort of fun night for Frederick, but I feel uncomfortable capitalizing off of it. It was horrifying.
It was a bad one.
Yeah. That space is very cool. Yeah, it was the Elk Street Butcher Shop. So the new space, the new concept is going to be called Elk Street Tavern.
Oh, love it. Yeah.
I've been just going for it in there for the last 7 months. I always kind of like the footprint, so I'm keeping the footprint, but just changing a lot of the aesthetics of it and trying to just kind of uncover, 125-year-old building. Uncover the cool parts of 125 years old and get rid of all the dangerous parts of 125 years old.
Like teetering bricks.
Just
maybe keep a couple of those teetering bricks.
Just keep people on their toes. Kind of cleaning it up, but really kind of bringing out some of the character of So I've been planing off the framing lumber, paint like 13 coats of paint that's never been sanded, and sanding it down and getting it back to like original wood, and so that's been kind of fun.
13 coats.
I don't know, so many.
A lot.
I mean, it's just
that's what you do with lead-based paint.
Yeah, you
in
literally
residential real estate.
You Tyvek up and
just get after it
and get every safety thing imaginable on, and then start cutting it off. Yeah, we're getting there. We're a few months out.
So at the end, I want to hear more about this, because for people that are big fans of what you all do at Redlight, this is going to be a nice extension, different vibe, but
it'll be different. It's going to be, there's a lot of things about Redlight's kind of service style that I think have worked really well, and we'll continue there. So, your food, your dish gets done and it comes out when it's done.
Yeah, I like that.
We're not waiting to try and put together an 8 tops, all their entrees at the same time and 3 of them die in the window. And so it's just when it's ready, it comes out kind of large share plates. Everyone just gets a little share plate in front of them, and then you bring stuff out.
Family style.
Kind of family style, yeah. It won't really focus on a specific kind of cuisine necessarily, more focusing on dishes that we think Bellingham doesn't have or needs, or we can do specifically, well. Or
I think Bellingham has done pizza, burgers, and tacos pretty well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great places, but there's a lot of those.
We got a lot
categories. Yeah.
But yeah, there's some great. I think there's some great food here. But yeah, we're excited about it. I just want to be. We want to be a little bit more ambitious with the menu and see how things go.
Nice. Well, you've already been, I feel like, fairly ambitious with the menu.
Yeah.
It sounds like partially out of necessity, like with the kitchen set up at the old Redlight. But it's turned into this thing. It was a risk that you didn't even really realize that you were taking with the comfortability, mindset in Bellingham. But you ended up taking it because it was the thing that made sense, and it was a total hit. And then you just built off that. That's really cool.
Well, we just kind of always say your customers tell you what you are, you know, and what is going to sell, and you just follow that.
Yeah.
Within the construct, or within the bumpers of doing something that we're interested in, and will keep us engaged. Essentially, that was kind of what we found as we were, because originally the plan was not to do a full kitchen at the old space, and it was kind of focus on go back to being kind of neighborhood bar with some yummy bites and kind of keep it simple and trying to keep the cost down and stuff like that. And the concepts I was coming up with, nobody was excited about the concepts I was coming up with, including me. It was just, we kept having these conversations, and it would just be like, well, we could do that. And it was anytime that sentence came out of my mouth, it was, never mind, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
Spending that, making that investment, spending that time and money will kind of free us up and allow us to do whatever we want in the future. So, we can be seasonal, and we can have stuff that's there for a week. And
it's almost seemed like you're the restaurant expert on this, and there's a lot of other restaurant people that have been in the industry for a long time. But one thing I noticed is I felt like, I don't know when it happened, and I don't know if it was like 10 years ago, but pre that, it felt like there was this like expectation around a restaurant. Like you said something about like people would leave the food in the window in the heat under the heat lamp, and everything had to come out there's all this etiquette to it. And it seemed like slowly that's changed to like, nope, it's going to come out when it's ready. We're going to do seasonal. We're going to do it this way. And it's almost like people had this expectation before, and then there was this transition period, and now it's like you go there because you're doing that experience, and that experience is going to be different than another restaurant. Like, what do you think changed in the restaurant industry where people stopped going that classical route?
I don't know exactly what changed. I mean, you're right. There's been an immense amount of innovation across the board in restaurants in the last, specifically, I don't know, 10 to 15 years, I would say. It's just completely changed what the idea of what the experience should be like is a huge spectrum now, going from, fast casual spots where you're going to order at the counter and bust your own food like you're at McDonald's, but the food's really good.
Yeah.
All the way to, fine dining and
16
gastronomy
forks and 12 napkins and
yeah,
and
all that kind of stuff. And I just read there's a taco stand in Mexico City that got a Michelin star. Like, that's amazing.
That's badass.
It's just like kind of goes a little bit to what I was talking about, where it's just like a great restaurant can be anything. It doesn't, we have kind of chosen a specific path based on kind of what we see around us and stuff like that, in an attempt to just try and be something different, not necessarily better, so that, there's a million different ways to do it. And that just seems to broaden all the time. And that's great.
Evolving. Yeah.
That's great.
I'm going to describe my first experience at walking into the new Redlight, because we've talked about the old Redlight, and there's something really special about it. You walk in, people are, the servers and the bar manager, like it's very busy. You don't feel anxious when you walk in. It's not like, oh my God, everyone's stressed out. People are just like moving. They're going, they're checking in with people. They're very friendly. Get acknowledged right when you walk in the door. The temperature seems to be like, I've never really thought about it, honestly, until we talked about this pre-episode of like, what's your experience when you go in there? There's this nice temperature. You can hear the other people there, but you can have a conversation. Everybody's just on it, friendly, efficient. You don't feel like people, like it's just this perfect balance. And when we were talking about this, I was just completely blown away. Then you get the food, and the food is like this. You're like, oh yeah, there's food, because you get all this good experience, and it's just like one thing after another. And that's really unique.
That's by design.
Yes, I believe it.
Yeah, I feel like I've gone to a lot of places that all over where they seem to be really hyper-focused on one aspect. And when we bought Redlight, they had this incredible craft cocktail, proprietary craft cocktail list with all these infusions and things that you literally could not get anywhere else. And so I really just said, let's take the care and intention that we've given to this, give it to everything else that we do here. And really, to execute that meant finding the right people to execute it. So, now we know our head chef, Teo, our GM, kind of oversee their respective front and backs of houses. But yeah, that's the goal. Like, it's like the music, the literal temperature of the room. We try.
I'm telling you, it's like whatever you were going for. Like, and then the experience being consistent. I think that's something that I've noticed with restaurants is, there's usually a spectrum of like, oh, this was like okay, or this was really good today. Every single time I've been like, damn, this is really good.
You're kind of only as good as your strong or your weakest shift group or whatever, and so we kind of have focused a lot on raising the floor as much as raising the ceiling, So, because I do think costs of everything are going up. We have to continue to charge commensurate with that, and so people are going to have expectations, and they need to be met every time in order for this to continue to work. So it's really finding people that are on board with that concept and want to be there. Which I think they've done a really good job of.
Let's talk costs. I mean, from everybody that I know that is in the restaurant industry or managing or owns a business in the restaurant industry, I've always been told like it's like a 5-year minimum. Like if you're going to ramp up to a successful restaurant, and then there's the maintenance, that happens after that. From like there's relatively thin margins sometimes. At times, some people it's all the time. Some people it's at specific seasons in their business, but how do you navigate this like balance of like, okay, costs of good are going up, costs of, employment are going up, understandably. I want to keep the food quality high. This source is no longer providing us with, our grain for X, Y, and Z. Like, how do you navigate that? Like, you're running a sustainable, profitable business. So that is the goal, right? Is to make sure everybody is taken really well care of, but also that the business is profiting, because then everyone is succeeding together.
Yeah.
How do you manage like that ebb and flow? Because I feel like that's just like this constant, like, oh, hey, today news is that bell peppers are twice the cost. You're like, why?
I'm not entirely sure. You got to stay sane with all of it, and that a part of that is just large sample sizes. If I look at the cost of limes, there's about 3 months of the year where the limes just balloon to obscene costs, and the quality is garbage, and
like when you squeeze them and no juice comes out,
that sort of thing. They're just like,
I would say on top 3 most painful things that I experienced with a lime is,
and when that's happening, that lime costs $2.50 or whatever. It's just absurd. And so we go through a lot of lime juice. You can't take away lime juice from a bar that's supposed to have, fresh citrus. So, so you just kind of have to figure out what it is over the course of the year. And there's going to be a lot of ups and downs. And as far as just, there's the rising costs that aren't going to go down, like, labor and there's a lot of goods that are just going to stay high. That's just, you just adjust. Trust that, it's not like we're the only people that have to pay employees a higher amount, know, so it's all relative. And in the context of every other restaurant and every other grocery store and everything, all those dealing with the same sort of thing, you just make adjustments. I think you can't get too stressed out about that stuff. It'll drive you crazy.
Yeah, I imagine the cost of limes. Yeah, all I notice is that I go to get him as, I'm just doing something with lime juice, and I'm like, oh, that one drop, cool, sweet. Yeah. Must be January or whatever.
My budgeting style is basically just like spend whatever it takes to make it the coolest possible version that we can, and trust that people will follow. We'll go there.
That's the artist. That's the artist part.
It's just kind of my instinct is always to do whatever we can to increase revenue, not cut costs. We've been lucky to basically been able to live in that kind of mode for thus far. But that can, stuff can change. So
it sounds like it all the time.
Someone gave me this advice for parenthood, but I think it works really well for business ownership too. But it's infinitely more important to be flexible than it is to be prepared. So adjusting and figuring out, use the data that you have to try and make an educated guess about what's coming.
Versus getting hung up on the fact that this was not prepped for, or things didn't go perfectly, or whatever it is.
Never goes perfectly.
Yeah. What do you think?
You're never more than a 9.
What's that?
You're never more than a 9.
But you got to shoot for a 10.
And you always got to be trying.
Yeah. What do you think this is a 2-part question. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that you see restaurant owners make, and what are some of your biggest mistakes? Like, what are some things you look back on and go, I'm glad we made it through that, but that was, whoa, because we all have them.
Yeah, that's a really good question. As far as hours, like sometimes that very stance of let's just spend the money and figure it out has not always served us extremely well, specifically with the build out that we did. There's a lot of ways where I really, I think I have saved us a lot of money and probably cost us more than we needed to because I didn't know what I was doing. As far as other restaurants, I don't know. I mean, every restaurant is, again, the spectrum of what works and how they function and is so different that what I learned as an owner is that I can't really judge anything from the outside. There were a couple places I worked where I had a pretty intimate knowledge of how things were running, and what I thought they should have been doing at that time in my position is drastically different than what I think now. What I want to see other restaurants do is, be confident in your plan and what you want to do in your concept, but just you have to be able to tweak it. You can't be stubborn.
Too rigid.
Your employees tell you what you kind of boss you are, and your customers tell you what kind of business you own. You know, I don't get to choose that really at the end of the day. I can try and guide it, but I'm just part of it. And frankly, not that big a part of it most of the time.
I mean, every role is important. Yeah. So, okay, I'm always curious. You have free reign of a 7-hour period. Your kids totally taken care of. You, your wife, you and your friends, you get to go out. What are some of your places, outside of your business that you love? What's your roadmap for a good time?
We just had a really fun event. Jim Meehan was a legendary bartender and author, came up and did a speaking thing, and we held a panel, and we took him down to Taylor Shellfish.
Oh, yeah.
So good.
That's a special experience.
Excellent. And it had been a really shitty weather day, and it cleared up just enough for like the sunset, and you're just sitting there eating delicious oysters and crab, and it was awesome. That is very cool. Starla's is doing pizza one night a week, and it is incredible.
All right.
They did a place called Blotto in Seattle that was kind of a phenomenon, and that is hopefully coming in a more permanent fashion sometime in the future.
Here in Bellingham.
Yeah, they're a new little natural wine shop not wine bar in the Herald building.
Okay, right on. Yeah.
Recommend them. The burger at the Grand is the most underrated burger in town.
Yeah, I've had it.
I'm all over the place.
You'd paint the town.
What's not to like? There's tons of stuff. There's lots of options. Probably bowling. Probably got to hit the lanes at some point.
Oh yeah.
You might be going,
20th century.
Might be going to meet the family there after this.
Nice.
Yeah.
You a big bowler?
There was a time when we bowled more regularly, but
drank beers. Oh, sorry, you bowled, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Lots of great options. Jack's is a great little bar. Love that place. Yeah, the 7 hours, we would jam in so much in 7 hours.
Yeah, I want to come along.
It would just be Ubering a block so we can get there faster.
Yeah. Next spot.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah,
that would be a very special time.
Yeah.
Very, very rare.
Very rare. I was just going to say, it happens very rarely. Yeah. So I'm going to ask you one last question. I'm going to pour a little bit more docks here.
Sure.
I'm going to do the straight bourbon here. You've been here in Bellingham for 25 years. What are some of your favorite things about Bellingham and the people here and just the vibes?
That is a hard one because I just truly love this town. I think I was like a lot of younger people where I was a little idiot and just needed to move away a couple of times. So
I did that too.
Yeah. And get in when you acquire that context, it's like, okay, after the second time, it's like, that's the last time I do that.
Yeah. There's
kind of like a quiet, humble, hardworking aspect to the community here. I think they're pretty passionate about their community, specifically downtown. I love the downtown community so much. Yeah, I just have always felt very welcomed here. And yeah, I think there's so much young energy with the college that's around that is just sort of creates a vibrance, and it's just more fun. And then just a bunch of cool, weird old hippies, and there's a little bit of everything.
It's a great mix of people.
Decent amount of young professionals, and it's just a cool, very, very cool growing city. Very different than where I grew up, but nothing against where I grew up, but I think I kind of needed that coming out of high school, like lots of people do. Found it, and they gave me a job at Hot Topic.
Sweet.
Not going anywhere.
Some buckled, some spike belts,
and
totally. Some black makeup, and
when you grew up in Wenatchee, Washington in the 90s, Hot Topic was the coolest place on earth. So there's not really, I can't argue with my enthusiasm for it back then.
Dad, get out of my room.
Yeah.
Totally.
Oh
yeah. Definitely some a lot of punk rock.
Yep.
Well, thank you for joining me on episode
absolutely.
3, making
Thanks
this
for
happen.
having
This has been definitely a conversation I've been wanting to have for a while, and just love what you guys are doing. And if for those of you that, I'm going to just say this shamelessly so Logan doesn't have to say this. I described the experience. If you don't have kids, you should go. If you do have kids, you should get a babysitter and go.
Yeah.
And go experience. It's a really amazing experience, and it's really unique, and I love that about your business.
Cheers. Thank you so much.
Cheers.
I appreciate it. Absolutely.
Boom.
Thank you.
Building Bellingham is a community podcast produced by the Bellingham Real Estate Company. Our producers and audio editors are Taylor Beal and Tiffany Holden. Social media and video production are by Cooper Hansley and Taylor Beal.